Coming up, we'll be joined by Kyriakos Pierrakakis, the president of the Eurogroup and the Minister of Economy and Finance of Greece. As head of the Eurogroup, he chairs meetings of finance ministers from the Eurozone countries and coordinates economic policy across the Eurozone. Good morning.
Good morning.
Great to have you with us here on Europe Today on Euronews.
Delighted to be joining you.
So look, Europeans are waking up today with deep concern about the escalating situation, the rising energy prices. How vulnerable is the European economy here to these shocks?
First of all, we're being tested. This is obvious. And obviously, we're also being quite concerned about how things are unfolding on the ground. I think we're meeting the diplomatic challenge. You mentioned Cyprus before and the visit of President Macron in Cyprus. I think it's quite pertinent that we have this testament, this manifestation of European solidarity by having forces sent in Cyprus. And I have to say I'm quite happy that Greece and the Greek government led the way by being first. I would also add that we're also tested economically. And this is what we're going to be discussing today at the Eurogroup meeting. Energy is going to be a core element of our discussion. The impact of energy prices is significant already, and we want to see how we're going to meet that challenge on the ground as well.
And just first back to that visit in Cyprus today, the Greek Prime Minister also accompanying President Emmanuel Macron. Is the war getting closer to your home?
By definition, I would say that we are concerned, and this is an area where European solidarity is absolutely essential to manifest and showcase. That's why I mentioned and I underlined that it's quite important that European states, European member states are collectively showing support to ensure the security of a member state of the European Union.
And Greeks are concerned. They're already getting very concerned about the cost of living crisis, how this is impacting their pocket. What will you do to address these concerns?
I would say that we already have a toolkit, and the toolkit is the 2022 toolkit. We're not yet there, but businesses and households are already signaling that they want to see what type of support they would receive should the crisis deepen. I think we have two key words here. The first one is duration, how long it will last. The second one is disruption. What type of crisis will it be? If you have a disruption of supply chains and maritime transport, for instance, at the Strait of Hormuz for a very prolonged period of time, by definition, the impact is going to be different. We're looking at the price of natural gas. We're looking at the price of oil. But effectively, there are many elements of a potential disruption that we're also looking at. The price of fertilizers, air traffic, food security. There are many elements on the ground that affect the international economy. And I mentioned 2022 because the invasion of Russia in Ukraine provided us with a European toolkit of how we can manage those crises.
So are we better prepared now?
Of course, we're better prepared. That's why we have this deployment of a toolkit. But at the same time, we need orchestration and coordination at the European level. And this is what the Eurogroup is for. So we're going to be discussing all of those things, both today and on many meetings, even at the level of the leaders, because we need a concerted European action.
Because the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, have warned in a report just the other day that the consequences could be felt earlier than we even think.
The key word here, I think, is uncertainty. That's why I mentioned duration. And uncertainty, we saw that with tariffs. Uncertainty has a much greater impact than a problematic policy per se. That's why you need to unleash the full potential of the European market, of the European Union. When we're discussing macroeconomic developments for the previous year at the level of the European Ministers of Finance, we say that the key word for Europe is resilience. But if we're frank, we need to underline and stress that resilience is not a growth strategy. We need much more. And Europe has a huge potential to unlock its innovation, its dynamism. We need to remove the barriers that exist between the member states of the European Union. And if we're speaking about energy, we need a single European energy market, which we don't have. That's why energy was put on the agenda. It's not only about the here and the now, the crisis that we're having at the Gulf right now. It's much broader. It's about interconnections. It's about regulation. It's about unlocking the potential of our European energy market. We need to do all of those things at once.
A lot to do indeed, of course. But just about the here and now, our viewers waking up this morning worrying about inflation, that it could go up again.
That's why I mentioned before that we're looking very closely the impact on oil and natural gas, and obviously a rise in energy prices has an adverse impact on inflation. We saw that in 2022. I would say that we're not there. 2022 was a much deeper crisis, but we need to be anticipatory and we need to be very well prepared. As you asked before, we're much better prepared now, but we need to be vigilant and we need to be observing the situation on the ground.
And what about the European Central Bank? What role will they be playing here?
Obviously, we believe very firmly in the independence of the European Central Bank, and they have shown that they have the agility and the capability to react when it is necessary, and we fully trust them.
And will that be soon, you think?
I cannot comment on that because, as I mentioned, the independence of the Central Bank is for all Europeans a sine qua non.
And are you feeling very worried right now?
I would say that I feel concerned. I would say that our job is to be concerned. But at the same time, our work is to know what we need to do and when we need to do that. And as I mentioned before, I think that we have this capacity right now, both at the level of Europe, both at the level of Brussels, and at the level of the member states.
And did this war take you by surprise, Minister?
In reality, we have seen a density of geopolitical events in the recent years which shouldn't be taking us by surprise at all. The things we have seen in the last 6 or 7 years would have never been anticipated, from a 2019 lens, which is when the government that I participate at came into office. But I think that at the same time, our capacity building has changed, both at the European level and at the national level. And this is why, even though you cannot fully anticipate the granularity of certain events, the mentality of anti-fragility and of capacity building yourself is now here.
And is the EU speaking with one voice, do you believe, on this war?
I think so. And I mentioned Cyprus at the beginning because that was a testament of European solidarity at the diplomatic level. We need to have more concerted and more coordinated action at the economic level as well. This is our responsibility. This is why we're here.
And President Macron's visit to Cyprus today, is it diplomatic or is it really strategic for him?
I think it's absolutely strategic, and diplomacy is a core element of that strategy. All of those things are being put together. Diplomacy, economic policy. Europe should speak with one voice on all fronts. This is what we need to achieve. We need strategic autonomy.
But Europe has not been speaking with one voice on all fronts.
Well, that's the challenge. That's why we have the Draghi report. That's why we have the Leto report. And this is why the whole idea is that you need a single market to begin with in order to unlock your potential, even on a sovereignty basis, not only on an economic basis. That will be the challenge of my generation in politics, I think. And it's a challenge that should be met. We don't have the luxury of not meeting it.
And you don't have the luxury of time, given the escalation crisis right now.
And what you're saying is effectively an element of the European story in the past. We typically integrated crisis, metabolized crisis, into a change in policy when they were manifesting themselves. We need to become more anticipatory. We should at least integrate optimal responses to crisis, but at the same time, we need to learn how to anticipate them. We don't have the luxury of simply reacting anymore.
And just one final question. Bulgaria recently joined the Eurozone. How is that going?
It's going well, and we have a collective experience of a transition to the European currency from all the other stories, like the Greek story, for instance, that took place in the past. We're supporting the Bulgarian government, and so far the situation has been going quite well.
Okay. Thank you so much, Minister, for being our guest this morning on Europe Today and for coming into us here on Euronews. All the best with your busy day of talks.